It was Christmas Eve, and the snow fell in soft sheets across the quiet streets. Houses glowed with warm lights, families gathered around tables heavy with food, and children pressed their noses against frosted windows, waiting for gifts. But for Daniel, a single father barely keeping life together, the night felt colder than the wind outside. He had no family left, only his 6-year-old son Matthew, and their tiny apartment with a small tree he had decorated using handmade paper ornaments. He was determined to give his son at least a little joy, though in his heart he knew the gifts beneath the tree were meager compared to what other children would find. On his way back from a late shift at the factory, Daniel stopped by a convenience store to pick up hot chocolate for Matthew. He hurried through the snow, eager to return before bedtime, when he noticed a small figure crouched beside a row of trash bins behind a diner. At first, he thought it was just a stray animal, but then he heard the sound of sniffles and saw a tiny hand digging into discarded bags. His heart froze. It was a little girl, no older than 7, wearing a torn coat and shoes too small for her feet. Her cheeks were red from the cold, and she clutched a stale piece of bread she had found in the trash. "Hey, sweetheart," Daniel said gently, approaching slowly so as not to scare her. "What are you doing out here all alone?" The girl looked up, startled, her wide eyes reflecting fear and shame. She hugged the bread to her chest as though it were treasure. "I'm just hungry," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to take anything. Please don't tell anyone." Daniel's throat tightened. He glanced around, but there was no one else in sight. "Where's your family?" he asked softly. The girl hesitated, then shook her head. "I don't have one. My mom she left, and my dad She stopped, tears spilling down her frozen cheeks. "He doesn't come back." Those words cut Daniel like a knife. He remembered the years after his wife had died, when he too had felt abandoned by life, when grief nearly broke him and left Matthew without a father's strength. Looking at this little girl, Daniel saw the same loneliness that had once lived inside him. "Come with me," he said finally, holding out his hand. "You shouldn't be out here in the cold. My son and we don't have much, but we'll share what we have." The girl hesitated, torn between fear and hope, but eventually slipped her small hand into his. When they arrived at his apartment, Matthew ran to greet his father, his eyes widening when he saw the girl. "Who's that, Daddy?" he asked. "This is Emma," Daniel said gently, learning her name on the way home. "She's going to have Christmas with us tonight." Matthew's face lit up. "Really? Then we'll be 3. Emma stood awkwardly near the door, unsure if she belonged. But when Daniel offered her a steaming cup of hot chocolate and Matthew handed her one of his paper ornaments to hang on the tree, something inside her cracked open. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen. That night, as the 3 of them sat together, Daniel listened to Emma's story. Her father had been in and out of trouble, leaving her alone for days at a time. Her mother had disappeared years ago. She had survived by wandering from shelter to shelter until even those doors closed. The weight of her words broke Daniel. He could not imagine a child facing the world so completely alone. But as heavy as her story was, it also gave Daniel clarity. He had been so caught up in his own struggles, feeling guilty that he could not give Matthew the kind of Christmas other kids had, that he forgot the most important gift he could offer: love, warmth, and safety. Emma's presence reminded him that even small acts of kindness could mean survival. The weeks that followed were not easy. Daniel suddenly found himself responsible for another child when he was already stretched thin. He worked extra shifts, sometimes skipping meals so both kids could eat. There were nights when he sat at the kitchen table, bills spread before him, wondering if he had made a mistake. Yet each time he saw Matthew and Emma laughing together, or when Emma shyly called him Mr. Daniel, he knew he couldn't turn back. There were obstacles. Social services got involved when neighbors reported that Daniel had taken in a child without papers. He feared Emma would be taken away, placed into a system that might scatter her further into loneliness. He fought tooth and nail, sitting through endless meetings, proving that he could provide for her, that his small apartment was filled with more love than she had ever known. One evening, exhausted after another long day, Daniel found Emma sitting quietly by the tree. "Why are you so kind to me?" she asked in a small voice. "You don't even know me." Daniel knelt beside her. "Because I do know you," he said softly. "I know what it feels like to be left behind, And I know that no child deserves to go through life thinking they're alone. Not when I can do something about it." Her eyes welled with tears, and for the first time she wrapped her arms around him. In that embrace, Daniel felt something heal inside himself too, the part that had never fully recovered after losing his wife. Months later, after a long process, Emma was officially placed under Daniel's guardianship. On the day the papers were signed, she held his hand tightly, her smile brighter than the sun. Matthew stood proudly beside her, announcing to everyone that Emma was now his sister. That next Christmas, their apartment glowed warmer than ever. The gifts under the tree were still simple, but the laughter that filled the room was richer than anything money could buy. Emma no longer searched trash for scraps. She had a family, and Daniel, once just a struggling single dad, discovered something he never expected. That opening his heart to one broken child had not only saved her, but had also saved him. The message was clear. Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about love strong enough to lift someone out of the dark, and kindness powerful enough to turn pain into hope. The night was bitterly cold, the kind of cold that clung to bones and refused to let go. Snowflakes drifted lazily through the air, settling on rooftops and cars, covering the small town in a glistening white blanket. Families hurried home with arms full of gifts, laughter spilling into the streets. Windows glowed with the warmth of Christmas trees and fireplaces. But for Daniel, a single father who worked double shifts just to keep food on the table, Christmas Eve was just another reminder of what he couldn't give. He carried a small bag from the store, instant hot chocolate and a discounted toy car he had managed to buy for his 6-year-old son Matthew. It wasn't much, but it was something. As he trudged down the alley near the diner, he noticed movement by the trash bins. At first, he thought it was a stray cat. But then, he heard a soft whimper. When his eyes adjusted, his heart stopped. There was a little girl, thin, shivering, and far too young to be alone. Her coat was ripped, her shoes had holes, and her tiny hands were digging through garbage bags. She pulled out half a sandwich, brushing off crumbs of dirt, clutching it like treasure. Daniel froze, his throat tightening. Hey there," he said softly, not wanting to scare her. The girl's head snapped up, eyes wide and fearful. She held the sandwich behind her back as if he might take it away. "I wasn't stealing," she whispered. "I was just hungry." Daniel's chest ached at those words. He crouched down so he wasn't towering over her. "It's okay. You don't have to be afraid. What's your name?" She hesitated before answering in a trembling voice. "Emma." "And where are your parents, Emma?" Daniel asked gently. Her eyes filled with tears. She shook her head. "I don't have any. My mom left. My dad, he doesn't come back anymore." Daniel felt his stomach twist. The desperation in her voice was too familiar. He had known loneliness after losing his wife, and he had feared for Matthew when he almost gave up on life. But this child, she had nobody. He extended his hand. "Come with me. I've got a warm home and hot chocolate. No child should be out here tonight." Emma hesitated, looking at him as though he might be lying, but something in his voice, perhaps the honesty of a man who had also lost, made her slip her frozen fingers into his. When they walked into the small apartment, Matthew's eyes lit up.
"Daddy, you're home!"
Then he saw Emma and tilted his head.
"Who's she?"